Boom, we are live. Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Wide World of Warhammer. Really today we got, I guess, the two best people with facial hair in all of Southeast Queensland. We got the man with the biggest mo ever and the most beautiful mo, Jack Ronfell. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, how you going? I wouldn't say that it's a new addition to my face, but thank you very much.
Oh, look, I mean, like, who doesn't love it? I mean, there's definitely some love going there. It's preparing for Movember already, I see, so it's looking great.
Yeah, had to start early.
Had to start early. And someone else who's a beard I admire more than anything, and also a human being I admire. Pete, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm doing good, Sam. Thanks for having me on. I'm pretty excited to be here. Talk about some club stuff.
Hell yeah, that's amazing. I know you've talked very fondly about my stuff before, so I'm a very big fan, and I'm a big fan of your other work, which I'm sure we'll plug later on. So, but before we get started into sort of talking about Queensland clubs and generally, I guess, the Gladiator Teams event that recently happened, just go around and give a bit of a showcase. So, Jack, what is like your Warhammer journey, and like how long have you been playing for?
Oh man, I picked up the Salt and Black Reach box with one of my mates, which naturally had some orcs in it a while ago, and I dropped it for a bit and then jumped back into the hobby about 4 years ago probably, and it's just been like full steam ahead since then. It's just I can't stop thinking about it. Like it's hard to get out of here, really.
Just the voices are in your head, just constantly thinking orkiness all the time.
Oh yeah, I'm screaming wire in my head just all day, every day.
And soon you'll be able to double wire even, which I'm sure everyone will love, right?
Don't even. No one wants to hear about it. No one wants to hear about it anymore.
No, everyone loves a good war. I mean, we heard it plenty over the weekend. I'm always a stan. I know some people are not as kind to the greater things in life. That is a good war, but I digress. So, but Pete, how about yourself? So how long you've been playing 40k for, and what's like your story?
So I'm a bit of an old hand, but not really. So I started playing 40k just at the end of second edition, going into third. I sort of got into it through Space Crusade and Hero Quest and that kind of stuff. And then I switched to playing fantasy mostly, played a little bit of 40k with the Elder, dropped out altogether when I was at uni and sort of came back at 8th edition. There was some pretty cool stuff happening then, and jumped back in with me and my brothers, and been playing competitively for about 3 years or so.
Very nice, very nice. We haven't lost you back to the old world just yet, Pete, or is that something you're watching with a little keen eye?
The more I think back to the days of playing fantasy, the more I don't want to play it. I think going to the round bases and free movement and not having to spend 6 inches of movement wheeling a unit just a little bit, it doesn't particularly appeal to me these days. I like it a little bit more free flowing.
More than fair. I have some mates who are keen on old world, and I used to play like 8th edition fantasy back in Canberra, and I still have like PTSD of dwarves just gunning my whole army down as I slowly just rank and flank move up the army. I'm like, this is such a fun game. And I have some other friends who are like, oh, come on, Sam, you'll enjoy old world, but they play dwarves. I'm like, I don't know. It's
I've got some less than fun memories of organ guns from back in the day as well.
But we're here to talk about the superior game that is 40k and the recent Teams event. But before we dive into that, so I had a question for you, Jack. Obviously, title the name Warboss Jack. So are you just like an orc guy through and through? You look glowing a bit green, I can tell by the camera as well. So, I mean, what's going on here? Are you just an orc guy through and through, or can we see you in other armies?
Mate, I mean, if anyone hasn't played orcs before, you obviously you just don't know. Like it's a disease. You catch it, there's no cure, really. I can't drop the orcs. I have all these other armies half done. I just can't commit them to an event. But I mean, just recently though, I feel like I've been putting all my reps into the orcs, and they've been pretty good this edition. They've just been solid. So I thought it'd just be best used. Keep playing them, and with this new codex, I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon. They are looking too good.
That's more than fair. I don't doubt you for that. Like, it looks like an amazing book. My golden brethren aren't looking so kind and so nice, so I'm a bit sad about that. But I digress. So we're not here to talk about that. So anyway, so heading off. So recently attended the recent Gladiator Teams event. So starting with you, Pete, for people who live outside of Queensland and haven't heard about a Gladiator Gaming Teams event, what are they like? What sort of is it? What sort of teams event is it? And maybe give a bit of context for it.
So Gladiator Gaming is run by Josh McGowan, who is a very, very big part of the scene. He's been in the scene for a very long time. And essentially he runs a series, or it's becoming a series more and more and more of 5-man team events up here in Queensland. So in the past, it's sort of just been individual events, really well run, great venue, well stocked on terrain, great prizes. But this year, it's really going towards more of a like a series with an endpoint. So teams can come and play, players come and play with their armies, rack up points to get things like best faction, best overall sports, best painted overall. It's just a really, really cool series of events, and teams is the best way to play 40k. I think anyone who's played teams will agree. So the more teams events, the better.
Yeah, most certainly. So yeah, like as Pete was mentioning, so it's become a series of events. So this was the second, and like I think 7 or 8 of them, which will happen throughout the calendar year. We have another one next weekend, which has just creeped up on us with like super quickly. It's a bit scary, but yeah, great events. So this recent one was 140 people or 5-man teams. Generally run like very WTCS, but with a bit of a terrain switch out. So yeah, it's good to play in like a very competitive series of events. So and I guess so a bit of premise for this show. So the reason we got Pete and Jack on the show is to talk about like recent clubs in the greater southeast Queensland region. So obviously we generally hear about, I guess, the Normal Blokes guys or Ethos, who are great clubs as to their own right, but we want to hear from some of the other people, you know, around southeast Queensland, and maybe the superior folk, I say. I mean, to each of their own. So Pete's shrugging, but Jack's like, yeah, absolutely. So hear their experience and like how they found the event, and also hear, I guess, how a club generally goes to or tries to attend these team events versus other people. So Jack, for yourself, have you been to many teams events before, or is this like first couple of handful?
Well, I got started. I've only been to Gladiator Gaming team events, but I have been probably going to most of them, or at least half, for the last 2 years, I think. Yeah, like they're what kept me going on tournaments, and like you might hear everyone say that, you know, singles events are great, but really it's the teams that keep us sticking all around. Yeah, I've got nothing but positive things to say about it, especially for our clubs. Like these team events give all experienced players like a big goal to work towards. You know, you can play at a big 100-something person tournament with all the boys, and it's not as intimidating as going to maybe the TNAO or those big singles events, because you're there with the boys, you're there with your team. It's always so much fun.
Yeah, more than fair. Absolutely. The teams is the part of the great experience of going with your boys. So for yourself, Jack, so you're part of the Brisbane Low Rollers, as I understand. So how is it decided that you guys like generate a team?
We give everyone plenty of notice. We'll put a message up in the chat. Anyone in our group chat, either on Facebook or on our Discord, is cool to put their hand up, and we always find a team for someone to be on, or almost always find someone, and maybe they could be filtered off to Josh's overflow. But we've been sending probably 3-ish teams and 4 teams to the last event, so we always manage to just fill the spots. We're not really picking based on player skill very much. Usually just we've got a few teams that have been developed just because they're mates and they've gotten in first, and then usually we'll have a team of people who are brand new and then maybe led by a more experienced player. But no, usually we'll bring the people who want to play, and then we'll find out their factions, and then sort out teams that maybe best suit that faction lineup so that everyone can play their army and stuff, and then we sort ourselves out and let the teams go from there.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And so just for people who aren't aware, so where the hell is Brisbane Low Rollers, like in the greater Queensland region, so for people who aren't aware?
Yeah, so the Brisbane Low Rollers, we play out of a games club called Comics Plus. We're in Annalee. You can look up Brisbane Low Rollers or look up Comics Plus, and we have a little room, a pretty big room off to the side of Comics Plus there, and you can go and pay a small fee to play at any time, or you can become a member, and then you can come and play every Thursday is when we have our games. If you don't live anywhere near Ipswich, where I'm sure you'd be playing with Pete. But yeah, you're always welcome to come around, search us up on Facebook, and join in. It's always good.
Yeah, fantastic. There's links for Brisbane Low Rolls in the description below. So, but Pete, so obviously, so the hints in the name, Ipswich Tabletop Association. So that's your club, as I understand. So what, so where Ipswich is like obviously west of Brisbane. So how did you guys sort of like get your club to go to these events? As I understand, you have quite a number of teams that attend these events.
It wasn't actually until relatively recently that ITA started sending multiple teams. I think in the Gladiator event in July last year was the first time we fielded more than one team. But since then we haven't fielded less than 3. So we've sent 4 teams a couple of times and 3 teams the other times. And it's kind of similar to how Jack and the Low Rollers do it, except for 3 of our teams, at least, we have set captains. So I'm the captain of the A team. Ben Ruffin's the captain of the Barracudas, and Nathan Mutton is the captain of the Scrappers. And most of those 3 teams are kind of made up of a set group of people. But there's sort of space, like 1 or 2 spaces that change in and out. And our 4th team has traditionally been captained by Dave Manns, but Mitch Curtis has just sort of stepped in to take over that one. And that's kind of probably the most fluid team. The other 3 teams are kind of pretty set with like sort of one spot that changes in and out.
Yeah, sure. So how do you determine, so obviously you listed off a couple of captains for each of the teams there. Do you try and like divvy up the teams so they're all equally competitive, or do you have like a set goal in mind for each of the teams?
Well, I at least like to think of the A team as the most competitive team. So we've got a couple of really strong players on there in Josh Woods and Jacob O'Donnell. Those guys are like, they're next level good.
They're weapons. They're very good.
Yeah. They're absolute weapons.
Jacob's not that good.
We'll talk about that later. I'm on that team as well, and Stephen Connors is one of the other stronger players in the club. But we've sort of got this 4th spot that's a bit revolving, and I do try to pick the sort of next best player or the next best player that fits with our army composition. So, for instance, we've got one really strong player, David Manson. He plays T-Sons, though, and Jake is playing T-Sons and just an absolute murderer on it. So, unfortunately, there's no spot on the team for David. And it usually works out pretty well. There was, I think it was not the last event just gone, but one before, where we lost Josh and Jake to some rep teams. And I had to poach quite a number of players from other teams, and they all kind of shook their head and agreed and said, yeah, we understand it's for the best of the club, but it was a little bit uncomfortable. And it's something I'd prefer not to do, but I do like to field like a best team if possible.
More than fair, more than fair. And it sounds like you have that sort of, I guess, that road to grow up to the A team per se and try and compete as much as you can. And we'll talk about maybe if they are even the best team according to the rankings, but I digress. So, but that's great. So it's good that you have a number of teams that can represent the club and you sort of feel out a variety of factions and stuff like that. So heading back over to you, Jack. So you said how people just sort of sign up and they have a faction in mind. Do you sort of try and balance the team so that people have, like, I guess, I don't know, equal competitiveness, or is there general teams which are seen as much more competitive than the other?
Well, I think yes, we do usually put slightly, like, based on people's experience or what they really want out of the event. But we usually, with our newer teams, we still always have one or two players who've played, 2 or 3 teams events in there, just to really hold it together, get the teams, the pairing process all going. And I feel like our teams are better off like that. I mean, first teams tournament I did, I got carried through by my mate Sam. So like it all goes around. And then there's a few teams like my team, we're doing low roll the cyanide. We've just kind of stuck together because we were just all similar age. We've just been mates for quite a while. So we kind of re-sign up, as a team ourselves, and a few other teams are starting to do a little bit like that. But no, there's no real art to it. But we always spread some good players in every team at least. But I think in the future we might end up trying to do a bit of an A team. Like I hear some of our players looking like they're trying to get like a real good team going. Maybe something to strive for the newer players at the club to get to that team kind of thing. But yeah, it's all fun. Hopefully we need to get a low rollers podium sometime soon. Hopefully this year, we'll see.
I'm sure it's not too far away. I mean, third place is always there available for you, Jack, in the team. So
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, that's big. Thank you.
No, but I'm sure you guys are obviously always competing. The quality of competition in Queensland is always growing and everyone's getting better and better. So I'm sure your time is nigh. It's only getting closer. So you talked about there sort of how your teams are all sort of, I guess, delegated and players are split up. So over to you, Pete. So in terms of like lead up to the event, do you guys sort of prepare together? Like, do you guys maybe like have a template for a matrix at all, like for a team pairing matrix, or you just leave everyone else to their own devices?
A little bit. So I wouldn't say we do a huge amount of prep leading up to tournaments. It's mostly people playing what they want, a little bit of input from others. But in terms of what we do sort of together, so the A team have been doing a matrix for a while, and we sort of share that format with the other teams. Most of the other some of the other teams are like a little bit more relaxed or, quite new to it. So doing a matrix isn't like they might not have the best information or it might be a bit overwhelming. But we've certainly helped out one of the other teams with just looking over their pairings and giving them some input on that. We do practice together. So one thing that we do that's definitely geared towards Gladiator is we always play on Gladiator maps at the club. So we've got printed laminated sheets with all the layouts. So whenever we're playing a game, we're playing on that. It's kind of hard sometimes to get everyone in on Thursday, but there have been a couple of occasions where we do like some mock pairings and some club versus club, team versus team stuff. So the Barracudas and Scrappers did one of those in the lead up to the last this April event just gone. But other than that, there's some physical considerations that we do sort of as a club to help each other out. So with pairings cards, so Ben does pairing cards for the other teams, and some of them are quite funny. If you ever played against one of those teams, have a look at their cards. Just making sure that all the teams have access to chess clocks and terrain maps, and making sure that they have the right information, although Barracudas don't always get that one right.
What? So you said you're hinting there a little bit, Pete. So for people who are not in the know, what are some of the fun things that maybe may have happened? Just are those models that are missing, or like things they're just not there, or what's going on?
Well, they've sort of made a name for themselves over the last 2 team tournaments of playing the wrong mission. So I think the entire team played the wrong mission in the not the last event, but the one before that. And then one of the players played the wrong mission in this one just gone. So I think I'll be printing out and laminating the mission pack for them this time around, and making sure they've all got a copy. It was quite funny actually that it happened twice.
Oh,
it's not a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
It's if I had $1 for every time it happened, I would have $2, which isn't much, but it's weird that I've got $2. So that's very funny. Look, even some very bright, intelligent people do make mistakes. I've had people at an event play an incursion mission, like a 1,000 point mission from a GT pack for whatever reason. Just people read rules wrong sometimes. I don't know. Or maybe they just breed them different out of each bitch. Who knows? But who knows? So you mentioned there, Pete, as well. I'm going to hand it over to Jack. So as part of this recent, I guess, Gladiator Gaming events, they have their own terrain layouts and terrain maps. So instead of the WTC, where you have like 1 through 8, as part of the 5-man teams event, we have 3 medium tables, 1 heavy and 1 light. And I'm going to show them on screen as well. So how did you guys, if you did at all, did you guys prepare adjusting to the terrain at all? Or did you just go in and go, it's close enough to WTC?
I think pretty much everyone at the club, as soon as anyone's getting ready for a teams comp, it's just instantly everyone's just practicing on these terrain maps. I think these personalized terrain maps are very exciting for our teams comps. I think it probably creates some good competitiveness for like the medium skill level teams, because you might have those rep guys who play on the official WTC maps all the time, but these are released, at a certain time, everyone gets it, and no one's played on them at first, and it's like it gives you that extra bit, it gives you something to practice and get familiar on. And it being only 3 terrain layouts, especially, for me, it gives me much less of a headache than if I was trying to practice however many there are in the WTC map. See, I don't even play them. I only play these. But like you can get really comfortable on the maps that you want to try and get good at, and I think it really helps at all skill levels to come into the event.
Yeah, sure. And I think they use the same core elements of WTC. So people are so used to it being part of the team's environment and sort of growing as part of Australian culture. So you can easily replicate these maps. So how about yourself, Pete? What was, I guess, how did your team approach seeing these terrain maps? And what were your, I guess, initial impressions from a club perspective?
Well, I guess the big impression is the heavy table is really heavy. And that put a lot of people sort of on the back foot of it. They're like, "Oh my god, how are we going to deal with this?" But then you actually play on it, and you can see that you can still get things around. It's not the end of the world. And like I said, we play on them all the time. So we do when we are doing our practice games and sort of tweaking our lists and refining things, we are doing that on those maps. So we know, for instance, I think our tower player was really quite concerned about getting his devilfish around. So just playing on those maps helps to sort of understand where you need to put things and how far you need to be away from a certain gap in order to get through there with the movement that you have. So that was a big thing. In terms of how it changed our setup, we were kind of, it did and it didn't. Josh Woods on our team was toying around with Imperial Knights lists, and when I don't think he ever would have got stuck on that heavy table, but it certainly made the decision to play Death Guard easier for him. That and the fact that he's one of the best Death Guard players going around, so why not play what you're the best at?
More than fair. Yeah, I think that I guess a theory about it being quite heavy was definitely very true. And that's definitely when we first saw the pairings. The tables, like, holy crap, these are heavy and going to be very infantry kind. But there was definitely angles which allowed for shooting armies to cover things, and then also the ruling allowed that so land raiders and things with sponsons could be ignored for moving through, allowed for, I guess, bigger vehicles and stuff to position much more easily. So it was a good layout, and like it's rolling forward into this next event, so people are a bit more prepared for them, and we'll see how the meta evolves. So I don't know if it'll ever get as solved as quote unquote the UKTC meta is, or the GW stuff, but we'll find out as people get more and more practice on them. So Jack, I guess just going back a bit, so you talked about with your team comps and stuff like that. Do you sort of, from a club perspective, are you guys trying to tailor people to play certain factions, or do you tell people to play whatever the hell they want and then see how they go?
Oh, I think that's all very much sorted out once people are filtered into teams. You know, we'll make sure that if someone's a diehard Chaos Knights player, they're not put on the same team as someone else who's still playing that. But once they're on the teams, it's really up to that slightly more experienced captain to guide the team through what they're building into their list, I reckon.
Yeah, more than fair. And we have a question in chat, so from the wonderful James Keller. So did the terrain layouts, I'm going to hand this over to you, Pete, before I cross over to Jack. So did the terrain layouts influence your faction selection and list building? Do you think the fixed terrain can be gamed or limit the competitive factions you will see at team events? So I guess start off with the first question. Obviously, illustrated a little bit with how Josh Woods thought Imperial Knights was a bit but what do you think about the second question as well?
Yeah, so on the first part, there is that. Like I said, it wasn't like a huge determining factor. I guess if anything, it sort of gave us an idea of what we were expecting to see, because it certainly was in our mind that people are going to see the layouts, and particularly that heavy layout, and think there's going to be a lot of infantry, a lot of melee infantry going around. So we did do some amount of preparing for what we expected to see based on the maps. But overall, it didn't really influence what we were taking. I think going into it, we had a pretty good idea of the factions that we were going to play. So there wasn't too much there. On the second part, I don't think so. I think whatever you're playing, you're going to be playing on some kind of terrain layout that's going to favor one play style over the other. There's certainly an element, and this is something that all high level competitive players will do, is practicing on those fixed layouts where you can stage up how far do you need to be, where exactly the certain firing angles are, and where you need to be turn 1 to be able to get to them turn 2, and that kind of thing. And I remember the first time I ran into that, I was playing Denith at one of the TNA events. And I remember he just put his things on the board, and then he whipped out the tape measure and goes, I'm here, 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 and here, and you can't see me. And I'm like, oh, okay. So if you're not used to that kind of play, it can be a bit confronting and a bit limiting, I guess, or a bit disheartening to see somebody not so much abusing it, but using it in that way. And I guess the other part of that is, what's the alternative? You might say it's like, say with Queensland Gamers Guild, run very thematic tables. Every table's different. And that certainly leads to a different style of play and a different style of list building. But ultimately, I don't think one, has merits over the other. They're both good, and they both lead to different ways to play that are both enjoyable.
Yeah, well, Pete, just a professional answer. Look, you've done this before, haven't you? You've been rehearsing, you've been practicing. I know you've got a podcast there somewhere in the background, surely. How about yourself, Jack? So, how did you and the club, I guess, did like the terrain layouts influence like faction selection? I guess maybe even amongst your own team in low roll style, did they affect it massively? And then I guess the element of what do you think about fixed terrain?
Oh, certainly. We were thinking about it a bunch. I think everyone noticed that it was heavier than it had been in the past. We were, the D cannons were straight into the Eldar list. I wasn't running any hogs in the orcs. Gaz was straight in. Like berserkers in the in the Votan list. All these things. I think we were falling into the trap of what Pete was saying. He was actually anticipating that kind of stuff, and then countering for it, which is pretty clever. But no, yeah, that is just all part of the fun, really. Just noticing what the table's preference and being able to try and put things into your list and counter it. And Pete, I've run into that with Deneth as well. With him just knowing exactly where to put his stuff is so inspiring, though. And I think that's where the advantage of only having 3 table layouts comes in, because it is very achievable for any player who's playing once, or maybe like once a week or once every 2 weeks to figure out where they need to put their models on each of those layouts in each of the missions to be safe from most of the lines and to threaten the whole board if you're playing a combat faction. And yeah, like playing over and over again, you learn, oh, maybe I do need the +2 inch move enhancement because that gets me exactly onto my opponent's backfield objective from this specific staging point. It's just all part of the fun. So I guess you can game it, I guess, by practicing, but it's there for everyone at the same time. So they're good.
Yeah, the effort, for people who wanted to put in the effort and time and energy, but that you can reap the rewards, right? So the lovely Pete, that's part of this show, did the maps and had all the objective markers and like the inch by inch grids, which I thank you so much for. So, and yeah, I've had like a bunch of practice
every time. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good, so good. And I know, obviously, in the UK TC meta, where the train layout's like fixed basically the whole way through, and you have a set regiment of missions the whole way through each of your super majors. Like, people do, I guess, tailor their list and have it all worked out. Like, as you mentioned, the D cannons straight into the list because they know 24 inches from the D cannons, I can cover this objective, this objective, this objective. And I'm sure in the Gladiator Gaming Teams Event, you can consider this and measure things out. But because of such, I guess, a variety of missions so far, and like this is only the first event with the train layouts, like it's not been gamed to that nth degree just yet. Ask us again maybe towards the end of the year if the train layouts stay the same, but I doubt they will. So this is the first event with them. We had it was 2 or 3 events with another layout, and now they're just being reiterated on. So I guess we'll wait and see. So amazing. So we also have the TO himself, Mr. McGowan. So when you guys were doing your pairings, if you had a matrix at all, I mean, who needs those stupid Excel spreadsheets? Did you try and tailor your lists around certain terrain layouts? So
I've seen your matrix, Sam.
Look, yeah, it says the guy who's got an accounting finance background and may live and breathe Excel spreadsheets. I mean, but some people are not as exquisite as us, beautiful human beings. So how about yourself, Jack? So did you, when you were you part of the pairing process, Jack, or you left that off to like some other minds who can suffer during that process?
Oh, I think we all love it. Like when there's pairings going on, we're all looking at the cards and yelling over the shoulder of our pairings of whoever's doing it. So no, we were all very involved in it leading up, and I don't know if we made any lists that took heaps of advantage of any of the tables. I mean, we had some lists that were going to be awesome on a heavy, but we just made all these lists that weren't going to be vulnerable to a certain type. Like, I don't think any of us really cared too much what we were playing on. I mean, it besides really obvious examples, but yeah, no, we went more for just being nice and safe everywhere with our team comp.
More than fair. How about yourself, Pete? Was there part of the decision-making process revolved around the tables? And like, how, if you're put on if say your sister's list put on a light was much worse or much better?
Yeah, there was some element of it. I can't really speak a lot about our pairings process because it's mostly Josh. So you see him sort of go into his little world while he's thinking up what's going to be the ideal pairing. So, I mean, there were some elements of that, like getting Eldari onto a heavy table, for instance. Did that a couple of times and reaped the rewards for it. Into something that might have otherwise been not a great match, but we definitely fell foul of it against you, Sam, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
What? No, but I think the same thing happened the other way. Like, one of our players felt he was pretty good in the matchup. Then he realized he was on the light table and didn't feel so good about the matchup. So we'll discuss a bit more in details as we go on. So apologies, I haven't obviously had the chance to talk. Sorry, Jack. You represent, I guess, low roll cyanide. So how did you guys go at the event overall? Like,
we feel like we had our best event yet. Us and the boys, we feel like we've been improving slowly as we've come along here. I mean, I think we came 8th, which is like whatever, but to us, it was really our big rounds into ITA A and also the normal blokes, which showed us our improvement, and we were very happy in that. The fact that we were able to edge out a little draw into you guys, Pete, and then also have a good solid draw into I know Pete, I know, but you know that's all it comes down to. But we also got a good solid draw into the normal blokes team. I feel like we versed the normal blokes at every single event. I've versed them for 5 events in a row, and Pete, we've versed your team a few times. So just those are big landmark draws for us. I know it's a draw, it's a weird thing to say, but we just felt like we were all quite comfortable. We're all quite comfortable there, feeling very proud of ourselves and very hungry for more. I mean, we got our ass kicked by the Ethos team, which just reminded us why we need to keep going, why we need to learn some more sauce. But yeah, we're very happy with how we went.
Slowly but steadily, you're making your way out there. So that's a great result overall in a very competitive field. And look, 1 point is all it takes, Pete. You may be 1 point, but I think that's where we got maybe our round win. I think it was by 1 or 2 points. So how about yourselves, Pete? 2 points. There you go. So 2 points. You mentioned you're part of ITAA. So how was your tournament as a whole? Like, how did you guys go?
So overall, I guess we can't be disappointed with how we went. I think we had the hardest strength of schedule at the event. So I think we finished 6th, or was it 7th? I don't know. You'll have to ask ITA Plan B about that. So overall, I think we did pretty well. There were a few things that I think we saw could be improved, and a few things that really didn't go as we expected. But overall, we're pretty happy. So, and those actually, it was against your teams. So the L'Oreal is Cyanide and your team, Sam, Virtus Veritas, that were the big pivotal ones for us. That if things had just gone a little differently, I think we would have been setting up for a podium finish. But so well done, both of you, for keeping us down.
That was the plan.
That's a plan, generations in the making. So you illustrated there, Pete. So obviously we won't go through round by round, but what some of the highlights, I guess, from the tournament for yourselves, or like big pivotal moments? You alluded to, I guess, into Virtus Veritas, there was something that happened, but feel free if there was something else that you want to talk about, feel free.
Yeah, so into your team, Sam, into Virtus, that was round 4. So some things sort of went our way, and we were pretty happy with that. So I got into Darren on Tau, and that was at 9-11. Pretty happy with that. It was kind of more than I expected. Our Space Marines player went into you on Custodes for a 5 to your 15, and that was pretty much what we predicted. So kind of happy there. You alluded to getting one of the matchups wrong, and I'm pretty sure it's our T-Suns player Jake getting a 19 into your Crons. We had that down as a 19 or a 20. So that one went our way, but the ones that didn't quite go our way, so Josh on Death Guard going into your Imperial Knight player Dylan for an 11-9. We were hoping for a little bit better there. So I'm not sure exactly what happened. I think we might have overestimated the match a little bit. And then David Truman, very illustrious, very high skilled player in the Queensland scene, getting the big 20 over Stephen on his Chaos Knights. And this is the one that we were thrown through a loop a little bit. So we didn't expect you to put Blood Angels up. So we didn't know what to do. And basically what it came down to was, I think we put Death Guard into you, which Blood Angels obviously aren't going to pick. And then it came down to me on Sisters or Stephen on Chaos Knights. Now, I typically don't deal that well with pressure melee armies, weirdly, because Sisters are meant to be pretty good at that. So we kind of thought Stephen might be able to scrape a few points with the Chaos Knights. They're pretty good at killing marine bodies. But what we didn't really account for was the table pick. So going onto the heavy table, that was just, yep, we have made a mistake here. And the big old 20 came down, unsurprisingly, under those circumstances, which gave you guys a 2-point win. So well done to you. And yeah, so pairings, table picks, everything kind of coming together to keep us out.
Yeah, look, it all worked out. So I don't know if so. Obviously, we're round 4, so obviously you can look at the sort of the placings in the schedule. And obviously our team, we looked and we're like, okay, we're playing ITA A first up. So did the matrix and everything. We reviewed all our colors and stuff and prepared for the night before. And it went roughly according to plan. So we're pretty happy with that. So, but was there any other big moments that you wanted to mention that happened during the event? And while you're thinking about it, maybe Pete, so we'll obviously give a massive shout out to Scott. So he was an absolute pleasure, and he said he enjoyed the podcast. So I've got to give him a plug there. He was one of the first people who said, "Hey, I'm sure you get this a lot, but I really like your podcast." I'm like, you know what, Scott, you're actually the first person, so I really appreciate it. So shout out to him. What a G.
Yeah, so the other one was our round 3 versus Cyanide. I might leave that for Jack to talk about if he wants to. But a very, very close 1 point there. I guess the one thing that we didn't expect there was Sam's Astra Militarum list with all the horses. That kind of threw us through a loop a bit. Yeah, so I will bring up one funny moment that happened. So in our round 5 against the Normal Blokes, Scheming Up, I think their team name was. So it was pretty much the very last thing to happen. I was playing Linford. He was playing Harlequins, the Mad Lad. And he moves our Void Weaver down onto this bottom objective to score 5 points and make it an 11-9 for our game and a round draw. Morven Val overwatches, rolls 3 6s on the heavy bolter, wins with almost all of them, goes through. So that was my favorite thing that happened. Just the very last thing that happened in the game, ticked it over to a 12-8 and got us the round win by 1 point.
Hell yeah. 40K is a skilled game. Absolute skill game. Not stamped at all.
Yeah, pure skill.
Pure skill. Jack, how about yourselves and Laurel Cyanide? So Pete alluded to the round to ITAA. How was that round as a whole?
Man. Well, we weren't feeling as intimidated as we had in the past coming into after feeling pretty up about ourselves from our first round into the Normal Blokes. You know, showing us we can play against some good players. Probably like you talked about Sam's list on the Astra Militarum. That's got to be one of my tournament highlights. Sam going undefeated with that list with absolutely no indirect in that guard list whatsoever. And some people would say like just almost no damage at all unless the horses are connecting in combat. But that was just like I had feedback from a lot of the teams saying they just didn't really know what to do with that list. So we were very proud of that. Into the ITA, I mean, we paired me into Jacob's Thousand Suns, which I feel like we'd been joking all day that I was going to verse the Thousand Suns from the very beginning of the day. Jacob was talking about, I don't want to verse the Thousand Suns. He doesn't want to verse the Orcs. He's done this he's done this shit to me before. He's been like, oh, I hate orcs. Oh, it's so bad. Oh, they're just pushing to me. And then boom, I'm just getting 20. It's happened at a different tournament. First time I ever played him, and it happened again today. I mean, I had Thousand Suns down as a green on every one of my pairings besides Jacob's, which is a yellow, which is still pretty confident. And I showed him no respect at all with how hard I pushed on him, and I just got clapped. I got clapped so hard it was stinging all the way into the evening and on the drive to the tournament the next day. He showed me how you cannot just disrespect a very, very good player, even if it's an army that you think you're pretty good at into usually. It showed me, though, we really need to get better as a team talking about our goals in the game. Like, especially with orcs, I'm an army that could push just head on and maybe play for a really big win or try and lock it out, lock out a small like a tight scoring game. We didn't often have discussions about we need you to just lock in 10 points, or we need you to really push hard. We didn't do that much, and I feel like I felt like I had to be the guy to go and get a big win in that matchup because I'd been talking up my Thousand Suns game leading up to the event. But I was talking to Jacob afterwards, and he was highlighting points where I could have pretty confidently locked in 6 or 7 points, just something into him by just playing a bit more passively and extending the game. And I feel like if I'd had a bit more if we talked a bit more as a team, or if I just knew the pairing a bit better, that could have gone well. My other probably favorite parts of the event were the fact that we versed 5 sick teams, and our rounds 2 and 4 games into Beers Battle Shocks and Bad Rolls, and then also into the Brisbane Blades. Some guys that I've seen around, but just are still some newer to the scene. They were just the most fun guys to play into ever. We had a big win into some of them, but they all gave us our best time on the tabletop, especially Hugo in my round 4, who had one of my best sport votes, and then also Rahul in my round 2. They were 2 of my best sport votes for the event, because they went down swinging, and we had a sick time. So there's always fun meeting new people.
Oh, that's fantastic, and it's always good to have have good competition. Even though it's competitive, you'll treat it in a good sporting way and have good sportsmanship on the table, even when you're getting clapped. And sounds like Magnus may have done something wrong during your game, Jack. But I don't know. We'll leave that to the law people to discuss. He's done.
Jacob's doing this to everyone. I see Hamish in the chat there from the VVs. He's talking about that T-Sun's burn still on there. And I remember I was in my last round 5, and Nathan, who was playing the triple monolith, he also versed Jacob, and he was obviously done in an hour and a half, and he came around. He's like, "Man, I got O'Donnell Day. I just got blown up." He was happening to everyone.
Big sword on that man. Yeah.
He keeps it well. He keeps smashing people, so can't fault him, which is amazing and very, very good. So you mentioned there, Jack, a bit about how one of the lessons learned per se was keeping up to date with your teammates and maybe keeping in line with how expectations are to go. Pete, so for yourselves, obviously post event, were there any big lessons learned that your team took away? You talked about a little bit before about how table picks and considering, if we put this up into the heavy, it's going to be terrible. But was there something else that maybe you, reflected upon for yourself or the club?
Yeah, so there's a couple of tweaks that, as far as the A team goes, there's a few tweaks that we have to make with some of our lists. So we're not feeling CK as a great option at the moment. I think a lot of people have figured them out. There's a lot of stuff in the meta that's really good into them. So it's a matter of looking at that one. The Space Marines list we took also, we felt underperformed a little bit. So we're looking at some tweaks there. But mostly the lineup's going to stay the same. But just a few tweaks with the lists that we felt underperformed a bit. From a broader club perspective, there was some feedback from some of the other teams about their matrices and kind of being way off on a few things or not getting very good data. So that's certainly some work that we can probably do from a wider club perspective, is try to get those other teams get their predictions better, get a better idea of how to do their pairings based on their matrices as well, and just have a more realistic idea of how they're going to go, how they're going to perform into each matchup.
That's fantastic, and I think everyone can always improve their matrix and refine. We definitely had some reconsiderations before, so even if people won their games, they could have won it better or reconsidered some other games. And maybe I know when we had the chat with Jacob before, the monolith himself, so I felt horrible as a Custos player into his T-Suns, but then he felt the other way, so it was a very Spider-Man pointing meme of like, hey, what's going on here? So one of us is wrong, and I guess we'll maybe find out eventually. So how about yourself, Jack? From a low roll sign-up perspective, you talked about obviously reviewing in-game and some of the matchup guest data, but what are some other takeaways or feedback that you took away from the club?
Goodness. I mean, I feel like it's not super often that feedback will come back through everyone's teams and then come together as a club, and then we'll all magically get better. I think everyone's just on the same path. Us as a team, we just I think we took big learnings from our games into you guys, Pete, and then also especially our game into Ethos at the end. We feel like we really need to crack how to actually play at that actual real like crazy high level. Like just figuring out how we still lose so hard into those awesome teams. And I feel like we just need to play. We just need to keep playing better teams. We need to keep playing better players and just improving. I don't think there's really much source to it actually.
More than fair. So we'll keep getting exposure, and you'll get better, I'm sure. And like you'll just get it'll be much more reasonable and much more consistent. Like, oh, I've played against this player before. I understand what's going to happen, and go from there. I'm sure you'll get used to it all. So we also had another question in the chat. So I was sort of referring a bit as well with terrain. So what's your opinion on mission variety? So obviously for these Gladiator events, we had a combination like Take and Hold, Scorched Earth, Priority Targets was one of them, and stuff like that along the way. But I guess, what was your idea of mission variety, and what do you think team events could maybe do better to change things up or spice things up from a competitive level? So I don't know if you know, but like in AOS teams events, for example, the teams actually pair based upon missions as well. So, for example, in 40k, you would have like priority targets, obviously hold objectives at the end of the game, versus maybe something on supply drop where just randomness can happen, obviously at the very end, or the ritual. So, and teams pair around that. Do you think maybe that's something we can consider? So, maybe starting with yourself, Jack. So, what's your opinion on mission variety?
I'd be all for a little bit more mission variety. I'm personally someone who likes to feel very comfortable in what's going on coming into event. That's why I've talked about I like those 3 terrain sets that I know where everything is. I like those few missions that we're playing, but I could understand how someone could find that a little bit more a little bit stale. I don't know, this idea of different players on the same team playing different missions. I don't know about that. We could try it out. Why not?
Yeah, spice it up a little bit. So how about yourself, Pete? So what are your thoughts on the mission variety? So for that was in the pack, and then maybe any other missions that we could consider for the future?
Look, at the end of the day, the TO will make the missions, and he's been. I have a pretty close relationship with McGowan. He's articulated that it's all kind of done in conference with high level players to sort of have a like Jack said, a kind of consistency. So you're not playing, Servo Skulls round 4 where it's going to blow out the mission one way or other, depending on a single dice roll, that kind of thing. So the end results, it kind of helps to, I guess, buffer the end of results down to something that's quite skill based. I do actually love that idea, Sam, of the AOS having different missions to go with different tables for the teams. I think that sounds pretty awesome. Could be a bit chaotic. the Barracudas team at ITA is already ahead of the pack, and
they're
on the ball with that one already.
Maybe because there's so much chaos going on, they'll just work themselves out. Because it's just so formulaic and straightforward, that's why they get themselves confused. They want the extra challenge. So I was just thinking the same thing. So they'll work it out for sure. They're already a step ahead of the curve, obviously. So there you go.
Yeah, they're the future.
There you go. They're just 4D chessing it ahead of us. And we have some people in the chat recommending 5 rounds of servo skulls. You guys are monsters. I don't know what you guys. You keep that for your own GT packs. I had to play that the other day. That was my first game of 10th edition. I was like, oh, okay, this is a bit weird. And then I played it again for the first time like the other week. I'm like, this is a mission of all time. Let's leave it at that. So
I've never played servo skulls, and I never will.
Well, look, I think we'd rather actually play legitimate soccer than play on tabletop soccer, but we'll work it out. So, I guess so. As we wrap things up, so another element I want to talk about today is, I guess, sportsmanship. So, you two guys are absolute pillars of the community and pillars of great sportsmanship. Jack, yourself, you even won the best sporting vote for this past weekend. So, and I saw you very loud and proud about such. So, I guess I wanted to hand it off to you guys to talk about, I guess, what in your eyes is best sportsmanship, and then I guess maybe some top tips for people who for being a best sport. So starting with the award-winning, the reigning, defending best sporting champion of the world, Mr. Jack Ronfeld.
Thank you to anyone who did vote for me. It means a lot that that people are enjoying games into me. That is probably. Besides winning's pretty fun, but like this the secondary best feeling in the game is knowing that my opponent has had a really good time as well. I feel like with sportsmanship, there's a lot of big YouTube. There's a lot going around about sportsmanship in the community, which is really good. People are always talking about how you should be playing at very. Sorry, I don't even know what I'm saying. It's. I feel like you're a better player if you're playing as a better sport. I feel like people who are trying to get competitive might fixate over little things that might go on in the game and might not be as accountable for errors and all these things. But I feel like being a good sport is just owning your mistakes and playing a really good, honest game with your opponent, just having the communication going and making sure that everyone is well aware of what's going on. And I think everyone, I think you'll become a better player for it. I know in the past, I've been a little bit more sweaty or a little bit more stressed out about things going on. But if you start to clean up your game, then you can also start focusing on just having more fun in the game, just stressing a little bit less, if that makes any sense. But yeah, it's just be about being above table and really communicating with your opponent.
Sure thing. Obviously, it's part of your nature and personality being like just that kind person. But what are some maybe things that you consider when you're in the game, Jack? Like, there's some general things you try and do with your opponent, like establishing that relationship with someone who you've never maybe met before.
Yeah, I mean, I love meeting new people. That's the best part of the event. And I like to try and make the parts of the game feel a little bit more exciting than just plastic on the table with dice rolling around. Like I truly do get, super excited about playing 40K. So I want my opponent to be feeling that same level of excitement. And yeah, it's just about being really super engaged in the game. Like, I won't touch my phone for the whole 11 hours of being at a tournament because I'm just so wrapped up in it. It's just the best time ever. It's just good.
Hell yeah. So Pete, yourself as someone who's also an amazing opponent to play against, who I've had the pleasure to play against, and there's some awards behind for people watching on the YouTube or Facebook feed of some best sports, I'm sure. So what does it mean for you to be, I guess, a best sport opponent or best sport in general?
So like Jack said, I think it is about playing kind of above the table, as in everything's clear and communicated. obviously it doesn't mean having to give away your battle plan or whatever, but just being very clear about what your capabilities are and why, what you're trying to do. You know, if you're trying to move into a certain lane to avoid getting shot, say that. Work it out with your opponent. Communicate with each other. Like helping people with threat ranges and that. That's all the mechanical side of things. But I think the other sort of more subtle side of it is on the social side of things, which is just trying to engage with your opponent and sort of connect with them in a way that's not necessarily related to the tabletop. Like you're playing a game, that's what you're there doing, but that's not all there is to the game. You're two people standing across from each other playing a game. Games are meant to be fun. And you should be playing with your opponent rather than against them. Obviously, we're all trying to win, but you're there to play a game at the end of the day. So just trying to make sure that you're getting a feel for your opponent, that you're sort of connecting with them on their level, because everyone has their own different needs and ways that they interact with people. Like, the way I play a game against Jack Ronfelt here would probably be a bit different to the way I am when I play against the other Jack at low rollers, Jack Tinning, where we're slagging each other out 24 all the time and just trying to goad each other into making stupid stuff. But Jack's far too lovely. I couldn't do that to him. His mustache is too pretty. So I think that's really important. But obviously we're not mind readers. Sometimes you don't pick up on things that might be necessary to sort of make that social side of things happen. So I think it's also on us to be clear about what we need from a social side of things. If something's rubbing us the wrong way, if we're getting a little bit flustered, if we're not coping with something at the time, it is on us to speak up as well. And I think you'll find most people will be receptive to that. I think that's part of being a good sport as well. It's not just being happy and friendly, although that will get you most of the way. It's also that two-way street in terms of communication, for better or for worse.
Yeah, sure. I think I wanted to say one more thing. Sorry, Pete, you reminded me. I think it comes down to just respecting the person on the other side of the table, because you're locked into 3 hours with this person. And there's not many times in the real world where you're getting locked into 3 hours with someone and you want to have a bad time. You're all there spending all this time. So if you're losing, be engaged in the game. If you're winning, don't be a dickhead. I want my opponent to be a certain way. So I'm trying to exemplify how I want someone to play into me. And I feel like you should. That's how you should be. You just respect the person on the other side. Don't cheat. It's not respectful. Don't get too stressed out about it. Don't make it a bad time. Help set up. Help pack up. It's just it's just what you should do.
More than fair. Some great words of wisdom. I just want to illustrate a point there, Pete. So you talked about, I guess, not getting tilted and stuff like that. So sometimes in game, it's very easy to just oh my God, the dice have done this or something bad's happened. I'm sure the game's a Linford when you roll 3 6s on Overwatch with your Morven Val. I would definitely go, are you serious? Is this a real game? But what's that common communication of obviously sometimes you get upset in game. Things go sometimes just badly. So how do you sort of, I guess, still try and be a good sport in those situations? Or maybe, Jack, in your example, obviously, when you were getting, Magnus was doing very many wrong things to you. How do you keep your spirits up? So I'll let Pete answer first, and then I'll hand it over to you, Jack.
It's just about realizing that it is a game, and seeing I try to see the funny side of those kind of things. You roll a whole bunch of ones, and there's two paths you could go down. You could say, "Oh, this is bull crap. I can't believe this has happened, and it's ruined my whole day and my whole game plan, and now I'm gonna get 20, blah blah blah." Or you could just be like, "Oh wow, yeah, that happened. That's pretty funny," but we'll move on from there. it's not the end of the world. Like, we're playing a game of toy soldiers. There's obviously a lot of people out there, myself included at times, and especially in a team format, you do want to do the best for your team as well. But I've never found that getting super angry or stressed out or down about a accident of chance ever helps you to get past it. It's better to keep your spirits up and to stay positive, because then you'll be in a better frame of mind to figure out what you need to do next.
More than reasonable. How about yourself, Jack? So when things aren't going your way, how do you try and like stay positive and still be a good opponent?
I mean, exactly like what Pete has said. You need to see it. You try and see it from the other person's point of view. You know, maybe they were super lucky, you were super unlucky. Like it just happens in the game, and yeah, you try and have a laugh about it, or think about how silly it is that, buddy, only one unit of rubrics and some doom bolts killed my battle wagon, and then all of my 20 boys died in that one turn against Jacob. But yeah, have a laugh about it, and just remember that you're going to see that person at the next tournament too. Like it is a small community in Queensland, so you're making, you know, if you want to keep coming to these events, you're making good friends for a long time, really. So like, what's more important? Like, is it getting salty over this game, or is it just keeping that relationship that you're building with this person who you're going to see in like next month at the Gladiator game and have a beer around? You know, like I just want to, you know, keep it good between the community. Like, it's good.
More than fair, more than fair. And obviously you guys are competing at a competitive event, right? Like, you all want to compete and win. And this is something I put my hand on heart, I struggle with sometimes is, look, you want to compete and be your best. And sometimes I guess that sporting thing can be a bit hard. Like, how do you sort of balance that, I guess, discipline between being competitive and being sporting? Or is it never an issue at all? And like, those two don't marry up? Like, obviously playing by intent's like a very common thing here, but like, sometimes at the tabletop, I can be quite serious and direct and maybe not be as kind or friendly as I should be. So do you guys find that very hard or not really at all? So I'll start with you, Pete.
I definitely don't see the two as being mutually exclusive. So being a sport, a good sport is not the opposite of playing competitively. And someone dropped in the chat earlier that you do see that the top players are usually the best sports. I played against Eric Lathuris, and the man is an absolute monster, but super nice guy to play against. He couldn't be lovelier. Like, he will roll you up and give you that 0, and you won't feel bad about it. So like, it's not mutually exclusive. I think it has a lot to do with how you're conveying the information, how you're carrying yourself. So there are, like I talked about earlier, with being able to interact with people on a level that they understand, to try and make them understand that you're not being a prick, that you're not doing things in a mean or a nasty way. And it's sometimes difficult to convey that if you are being like super, super serious. You're just like, you know, dead face, monotone, do this. So there is a bit of work, I think, that we need to be aware of, that how we say things can have a much bigger effect than what we say, and just being mindful of that. And if you are that kind of person that can't, that does get that way, does get kind of quiet, just to communicate that as well. Like, just to be very clear that, you know, I'm not salty. I just need to concentrate, and, you know, I'm sorry if I get a bit quiet, something like that. So that everyone knows what's up, that we know what to expect from one another.
It's amazing what happens when you talk to people, hey, and explain what's going on. It's like, hey, I just need to take 5 minutes away, just got to clear my head and stuff like that. It's like, oh, cool, no stress at all. It's like, this person isn't actually super upset with me. So it's always good to sometimes have that conversation. How about yourself, Jack? Anything to add to there?
Not really. So yeah, I think well said, Pete.
Man of wisdom there. I mean, that beard has to provide special powers and knowledge, obviously, right? You'll get there soon,
it's
Jack.
got to come from somewhere. It's
got to come from somewhere. So this has been fantastic, gents. And before we sort of wrap things up, so I'll hand it over to you guys. So starting with yourself, Jack, is there any like final plugs or shout outs you want to promote before we wrap things up?
Sorry, low rollers guys. I don't actually really have any. I mean, other than if you're looking for games or a community or just some new mates in 40K or just in life, just search us up or look in the link that you've got here, Sam, and come play some games at Comics Plus with the low rollers boys. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, they're a fantastic bunch, and there's a group chat and stuff like that, and a good profile. So there is held an RTT, and I'm sure there's many more one-day events or other bigger events in the future, plus a little comp league on a Thursday night. So it's fantastic. So how about yourself, Pete? Any plugs or shout outs you would like to make?
I guess just for this Tabletop Association, if you just look us up, and I'm sure Sam's going to drop the link in. There it is. Jump on board. We're a fairly big club. We've got a lot of space there. It does sometimes fill up. So we do, if you're looking to come along and play, we play on a Thursday as well, which is a bit unfortunate because we don't get to play the low rollers guys often because we both run our club nights on the same night. But if you do want to come along to Ipswich, jump on there every Sunday. There's a pairings post that goes up. Just put your name in, what you want to play. There's casual, competitive. Come along. If you're playing 40K, you're guaranteed to get a game. There is no charge out at Ipswich, and we've got a fantastic venue out there, Epic, where you can get a feed, you can get some drinks. If you're into Magic, you can do all that kind of thing. So that's that. We've got our GT, which is coming up in June. If you jump on the Queensland 40K tournaments page, I don't know if you've got that link, Sam, that you can drop in.
I'll get it for you.
Yeah, this is why you're the host. You can jump on there and see sort of all the upcoming events in Queensland. So that's about it for shout outs for the club.
Also, Sam, you've been very modest for a guy who won Best in Faction and whose team, the VVs, only came second on the event. You haven't even mentioned
if you ain't first, you're last, is what Bobby Boucher taught me. So we're just going to come back for more vengeance, and we'll get there. And look, I mean, I got carried. It's fine. I just did what I could, and I scored my points, and we did from there. So. But also, I think, Pete, you also have another shout out or plug. So, if I don't mind, as well, you also have your own business per se, and like cases.
Yeah, I make some cases. They're all right if you're in the tournament scene in. Thank you. Look at you doing all the work for me. If you're in the tournament scene in Australia, you've probably seen them around. So jump on, grab one. Or don't. I'm not much of a businessman, Sam. I just make toy boxes in my shed and sell them. All right.
Look, they sell themselves. I highly recommend them. They're fantastic, and I'll definitely be getting another one, whether I win one or not. But I mean, if I keep this best Imperium or best Custo player up, like we've seen the Codex, maybe just I only need one event and I'll be all good for the rest of the season. But we'll see how we go.
Look, that could be your thing. So I know. Michael from the Gathering Storm is super happy that Eldar have dropped off, so he can get his case, his Best in Faction case, and this is a sign for you. It's all coming up, Sam.
It's all coming up Millhouse for me, baby. So let's go. So We'll see what happens, though. I'm sure you're after the best Orc one, Jack. Surely, right?
Oh, it'd be nice. Geez, also looking a bit too strong right now, though. It's gonna be weird, but I certainly am pushing for it. I mean, I've named myself War Boss Jack there, trying to manifest it. I don't know. We'll see. Bring it on, other Orc players. Bring it on.
Hell yeah. But there's no one else notable, so it's fine. You'll be all good. There's no one else who plays Orcs in the region.
You're talking trash there. I'm seeing them all in the chat. They're all letting off the wires. All the good boys there. That's looking good. There's
very good. Yeah, very good. So, really appreciate the chat here, guys. And so just before we wrap things up, so obviously down at 40K, the official terrain sponsor for us is Tip Top Terrain. So they make a variety of sets, and you saw some of those at McGowan's recent event. So the WTC sets, and yeah, I got the GW set right next to me. I'm very much looking forward to the ITA GT, which will be running GW layout. So I'm already ahead of the curve, getting some practice in. So it'll be something a bit different, a bit fun to try out. So really recommend those guys. They've got some great MDF sets, and the official terrain sponsor of the Down the 40K circuit. So really appreciate those guys. And secondly, if you ever need some hobby needs, obviously Emperor online, so emperor.cc provide a variety of hobby products or supplies. So if your LGS doesn't have anything, and there's 20% off some GW stuff, so can't fault any of that good stuff. And yeah, that is all I have to say. So really appreciate the chat you guys had tonight. I'll see you, Pete, next weekend at the next Teams event, ready and roaring. And Jack, I'll see you, I'm sure, in the not too distant future.
I will see you around. Thanks for having me on, Seth.
Awesome.
That was fun.
No worries at all. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Have a good, extra long weekend for those celebrating Anzac Day. So hooroo. Catch you, lads.